Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited to announce this next panel. The world is in a digital era for some time now, and technology has no plans of slowing down. One thing remains the same, however. People are a key factor behind the success of tech and FinTech businesses. I welcome our moderator, Andrea, Badiola, Mateos, the head of Finance PwC Cyprus, to introduce our speakers. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tessa. Welcome, everyone. I'm very, very excited about this panel. We have a lot of interesting topics to discuss, a lot on KPIs for HR and the recruitment processes and the new trends. So we will do a set of questions. Some of them are directed to specific speaker, but anybody can jump in if they wish to do so. And at the end, we will open the floor for questions from the audience. So we're going to go right in and start talking about trends. So recruitment and people management is ever evolving, and we have seen a lot of new trends happening. In particular, I want to touch upon education and everything that has to do with the new trends for education that are coming up there. So Netflix, TikTok, bespoke degrees, companies creating degrees for their specific employees. So Paris, maybe you want to jump ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for letting me kick it off here. It's interesting, if the topic of today's conversation was how much money should somebody make, I think we'd have full house. But when we talk about development and learning, it's kind of, I got better things to do right now. But that's changing. So going to bespoke degrees, that was inevitable to happen. Some people think that it's maybe a consequence of COVID, but it is not. You'd have massive technological advancement, economic growth, new generations in hiring trends in the last decade, and that it became inevitable to have bespoke degrees. So maybe just let me figure out, how many of you in the audience have a university degree? Just put your hands up. Now that's extremely fast diminishing half-life of the skills you've gotten from your university degree, right? Especially if you studied marketing back in 2005. So it's unless, and this doesn't cover every single education, there's obviously more high scientific stuff that you need to get some background in, but I think if you're now in a position where you're a young adult and you're wondering, what should I do to make myself more employable? University education isn't the first thing on your list. Right? And we've all heard the narrative before. You have this Gen Z coming aboard, and they're looking at millennials with an $80,000 to $100,000 loan for an education that got them a project coordinator position. Right? And so skills over accreditation is where the narrative is going to right now. So bespoke degrees is the consequence. You have companies saying, we'll train you, we'll pay for that education, and then you have companies that don't even mention the learning and development opportunities they offer to potential employees. I think they're missing out. So generally speaking, it's not a trend, it's a reality right now. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it. And it's already been driven by the Googles of the world that offer non-accredited hiring decisions. You don't have to have a degree, but you just need to prove that you have the skills. And to wrap it up, I think it's when you're an employer from that position, you want to get the most value from your employees as quickly as possible. Right? So if they can prove they have the skill you need to tap into what it is you're doing, then you just want to bring them on board. Who cares if there's a degree or a rubber stamp? I think that's a very colonial English thing, the rubber stamp, and it's gotten its way into the university system too. So maybe enough of that.
But what would happen, for example, if you had somebody doing one of these bespoke degrees by a specific company, and then they want to switch jobs, let's say 5 years down the line, the degree is so bespoke that they may not be employable elsewhere. So Elena, for example, would you hire somebody at Exnes that would come from a bespoke degree somewhere else?
I'm not sure that I would hire someone who is watching TikTok all the time. But if there are some skills out of there, of course, it's very valuable. And while Paris was talking, I remembered an example that I had in my family. My daughter is watching YouTube, and she learned how to do Rubik's Cube, like this thing, through YouTube. I don't know how to do it. Nobody taught her. But watching the videos, she learned how to do it during 1 minute 30 seconds. Can you imagine that? This is the real example how some skills can be learned there. But from another perspective, you cannot talk to your TV. You cannot talk to TikTok. You should have some social skills or soft skills in daily collaboration, and traditional education still is a good example where you can get the social skills. So from one side, it's quite interesting and emerging trend. From another side, we should be mindful about the limitations. And as usual, the balance is the best thing. When you're balancing some skills that you can learn watching something, and then you should have some social skills interacting with real people, not with your TV.
Thank you. Anna, PwC has launched a few years back the New World, New Skills program, whereby you're specifically training thousands of people around the world for your specific skill set needed to work at PwC. Can you tell us a little bit more about this program a few years down the line? How is that working out? Would you recommend it?
Sure. The New World, New Skills is what we launched as a network a few years back. And what was driving that at the time was that we knew that there would be a lot of digital skills that we'd be looking for in terms of servicing our clients, that the need for all those skills we wouldn't be able to source out from the market. So it was a compelling story not to leave any of our people behind. So we wanted to bring everyone up to a scale of, minimum digital skills so that they could be able to deliver and not become obsolete, either within our firm, but externally in the market. And it's an initiative that we also roll out with the communities. So we did a collaboration with UNICEF to actually bring digital skills and wider social and people skills, which are becoming increasingly more important. So we started with bringing everyone to a minimum level of digital skills. Obviously, from 1 minute to the next, the skill set that you need keep increasing and increasing all the time. So there is a minimum level that you bring people to, but then you have the people that are actually driving this. So we used it as a way of getting people to actually innovate and bring ideas forward. So instead of us, coming out with company-wide initiatives only and drive innovation and new change, we use this as a platform for people to have digital labs and digital accelerators to actually, from their day-to-day life, how could they improve that? How can they embed digital and technology into their life so as to make sure that, they bring those new initiatives and then these are rolled out to the rest of the people. I have to say that people embraced it. What we are seeing is that, the needs are changing, constantly changing. Each department will have different needs. So now we are moving to tailoring it for each business line as to what is needed and what people are saying that is needed and how to roll it out. Some things are obviously, network-wide. Some of them are, in a specific service that are relevant. But what we have seen is that, different people have different appetite to embrace these things. So, and increasingly we see that, some people are driven by running these things on a full-time basis as opposed to client servicing. So, and you see that also with Generation Z that, the aspirations of people are not the same. People want to change what they're doing on a constant basis. It's not, when I joined PwC, I joined as an associate and my aspiration was to become partner. So it was kind of, the vertical career ladder. You no longer see that that's relevant for most of the people. People want diverse experiences to move into new roles. What's on offer is constantly changing, so they want to try new opportunities. So they have to be able to be agile and learn new skills as they go. So as a big employer, we see a responsibility that we need to be offering skills and trainings which people can tailor to their own development. And maybe you've seen lately that our PwC US came out with the My Plus 3-year program that is launched currently, where the principle is we see the employee as a customer. So as a customer that you're tailoring what you need and how you want to progress, what you want to do. That's the concept that we see the employee. So there will be a lot of technology built behind it to give people ownership as to what projects they want to work on, what skills they want to develop, and actually provide the learning paths individual to each person to cater for that. I think that's where the world is going. And as employers, we need to embrace that and providing that platform where people can gain this experience and these skill sets, because the skills needed keep changing.
Pure customization within the company itself. Maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, but it's maybe a luxury that big companies such as PwC can afford to do. I'm not sure this kind of customization is something that you can scale down to a company that has 10 to 50 employees. It's not like, when you hire somebody for a specific position, you expect them to do that position. And if they move to another position, you're literally left with no one to do that position, and then you need to recruit from scratch for that. But maybe I'm wrong.
I think you will always, you don't own people. People will always look to for new opportunities of what they want. What you need to make sure is that, you train them and you give them everything possible, and hopefully they have the experience to stay with you for as long as you need them, and to get the benefit out of those skills. And then, we see that maybe they move to, to other companies, and maybe they're their next customer.
Ross, how about including those skills within the recruitment process? How do you see that applied? Is it being applied? Is there any sort of filtering, testing?
Well, first of all, that's a very good question, Andrea. What I would say is, as Cyprus and Malta's largest recruitment, HR and payroll service provider, we're finding in 2022 that the need for skills testing as part of the recruitment process is probably more vital than ever, because as we emerge out of what we would call the post-pandemic, people are looking for more of those cross-functional or soft skills, as Eleanor referred to. People want to know about people's agility, people's communication skills, their leadership, how they will adapt to change. And really, we're finding that skills-based testing actually presents a far more effective and timely recruitment process than those traditional 4 or 5 interviews that we might have gone through previously. Now, we're actually quite fortunate at GRS that we are the only accredited recruitment company here in Cyprus and Malta who can actually offer the internationally acclaimed Hogan psychometric assessment as part of the recruitment process. So you mentioned, how do you tailor this down to small companies? Well, the great thing is that when we take on an assignment such as that, we'll actually speak to the organisation, whether it be PwC or Joe Bloggs Limited here in Cyprus, and we ask them, what skills and personality are you actually looking for in your employee, tailored to the specific role and obviously the culture of your company? Now, what we find from a candidate point of view is the candidate feels that this is far more enriching in the recruitment process, because they feel that you, as an organisation, are far more interested in them as an employee. And in turn, by actually taking the time to learn about your employees, what you'll find is that your turnover rate will reduce. We've seen this in the facts and figures. And not only this, but you'll get a happier, longer-term employee. So in essence, it's well worth investing in actually getting to know the people that you're looking to hire, because these are your stars of the future. So we can do it, whether you're large or small, but investing in your people, it's one of the best investments you can actually make.
I saw Paris. Anna, you guys wanted to add something before? Anna, do you want to take it?
To add something on this.
Go for it.
And when it comes to small businesses, I think they do really face challenges different to big corporates, that's for sure. I think what's important and of course the interest and the investment they put in differs from company to company, right? I'm not saying that this is a general rule, okay? But I think what's important is to understand that the culture should be deliberately designed and followed by the leadership. Otherwise, someone else will do it. No company exists without a culture. So if you don't deliberately design that culture that you want, the culture is going to start by itself, and then you have much more problems that you need to solve. So I think this is worth investing in your people to create that culture. And of course, you have to be very specific with your values and your, what are your core values. Be very clear on your communication, and your goals, and make appropriate decisions and choices based on that.
Paris?
I was just going to disagree with, or just provide an opinion about what you said before, with smaller companies not being able to do that. I think they can, but in a different way. It's not going to be PwC style, right? It's not going to be copy-paste. My company is 11 people. We have, in the contract with everybody that comes in, they have a hefty budget to spend every year. They can travel the world and go anywhere they like and learn anything they want as long as it's relevant to their business, and come back, and the only obligation is you need to tell and train everybody else in the team. right? So you can do that. It's not, and
I'm definitely taking note of that.
It's
That's
just
interesting.
enticing for somebody to say, this is a signal that we're a learning and development agency. If we weren't doing this, who would, right? So we kind of say, it is the most important thing that you learn. You come in the morning, you leave in the afternoon, what have you learned today? And that's how you signal, based on your recruitment practices too, that that's important to you.
Very interesting takeouts. Anna, you have touched on company culture, so I'm going to dive right into it. And linking to what Paris you're just saying now, I think that, it's the ideal scenario that every company has a company culture and that everybody in the company is involved and on the same wavelength with the company culture. But I don't see that from my optics of the industry. I don't see that being neither a priority or a mainstream being applied into companies. And I'm just throwing a statement out here, and feel free to disagree with it and break it down. But I see that in company culture, every company comes at the beginning when they're a startup saying, this is who we want to be, and this is how we want to present things, and this is how we want every employee in our company to be like. But then, since they're a startup and they have a small amount of employees, or they grow up extremely quickly, they don't really have a full HR team that can train and pass the values on. It's not necessarily something that they look for when they're hiring an employee. They look for the immediate skills that we were talking about previously, not necessarily the personality that will go with the company culture. CSR is another part of this company culture, and I see reflected that the more the company grows, the more time and effort they devote to this. But at the earlier stages of a company, I don't see in this particular industry that this is a priority. So what's your take on this, guys?
I think it will be very soon. And I think we have to stop waiting for a crisis to happen in order to react. I think that's what the pandemic taught us, that we can change, and we can change very quickly, and we don't need to wait for something dramatic to happen in order to do that. Creating a culture is very, very important, but I think the challenges that sometimes it's small and big companies face, I think the first and primary one is the resistance to change. We are all humans and we are creatures of habits. So, in order to change something, when you're about to change something, you're definitely going to find resistance from people. That's why in a lot of the conversations and the workshops that I'm doing, we focus a lot on bias. There's a lot of self-work that needs to be done in order, on every single individual, every single particle of that company, in order to create that change. So the first is resistance, and of course, if we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, then the other thing that you find is that some people are going to lose their privileges. So that's another battle that you have to go do in order for them to understand that you might be losing something now, but it's for the general good, and everybody's going to gain in the end. Another challenge, I think, and I said it before, it's lack of specific goals. You have to have specific goals when you're starting to work on creating that culture. You have to have great communication processes, so that what you're trying to communicate, it's really understood, so it can be followed and applied. And accountability. I think accountability is key. Just making a decision, and you mentioned CSR, but now we have to move on beyond CSR, which is seen very regularly as a part of the marketing, and not really going into the core of really creating change. So moving beyond CSR, I think it's very important to understand that we need that change to happen and be a solid change in the organization.
I would like just to give you some example how the corporate culture really works. Just imagine that we have this big white wall, and we have a group of people here. And we will ask this group of people to paint something. And everybody will have a color and a brush. What they will be painting, whatever they want, because nobody will guide them. But even if you will guide them, they will continue painting whatever they want. Some of them will go out because they don't like the exercise. Some of them would like to have coffee instead of painting. And at the end, this will be your corporate culture. And more people we have, more messy and unclear this picture will be, and more efforts you should undertake in order to manage somehow this picture. Or you may say, whatever you draw, that's fine. This is our corporate culture. And again, it will be another result. And you have to accept if you like this result or not. Therefore, many people are talking about corporate culture, but just imagine how hard it will be to manage this group of people to paint something wonderful, sea, sunshine, or whatever. Everybody will be doing whatever they want because this is the way how people react. And if the companies want to have a clear picture of their corporate culture, they have to put some efforts, they have to put some guidelines, what they want to do. Otherwise, people are people, they will always do stupid things or things they like. And whatever you will see at the end will be a result of your efforts.
I don't disagree with what Anna said, and I think that's a great example, what Elena is saying. But I will say that this is for today. It's not for the future. And especially not at this conference. I mean, culture from a leadership perspective, but by the way, culture is the most boring word ever, right? It's like you hear it only when there's this kind of conversation, because nobody really focuses on it. But if you take a perspective of what does culture get you, hopefully, that sort of allegiance, the behavior, right? And loyalty. Tell me, is this conference about loyalty? Because I don't think with the turnover you have in your industry, you need to worry about that. The only loyalty you worry about is customer loyalty, not employee loyalty. So if they don't stick around long enough to actually stick in and gel and do something, what are we talking about culture? Maybe change the word to the style of company you have. It's a fun company, it's a challenging company, it's a this kind of company, but then try to control behavior. Understand how behaviors can be fenced in. And I think what the future looks like is we're going to stop trying to impose values on people. Think about it. You have the Gen Z coming in. They have their own values. They're vastly different. They're an alien species, okay? They're vastly different from Gen X, or I am a Zennial, by the way. I'm between X and Millennial. But they're vast, and we as a generation, impose values on others. If you want to work for me, this is how you're going to believe the world is. Stop thinking like that. Try to milk them for 2 years and then be grateful for that and move on. But just make sure you don't have to call the police because the behavior just went a bit rowdy. I think culture is boring. We need to make culture exciting is all I'm trying to say.
That sounds like a true challenge.
That's why you called me here for, I think, to a bit challenge some of the things.
Yeah. Anna, maybe you want to add something to company culture, how you build it?
I think company culture is, what people experience on a day-to-day basis, and also, it's a reflection of what leadership tolerates. So, if you have leaders that tolerate bad behaviors or inappropriate behaviors or putting too much pressure on people and stuff like that, I mean, as long as leadership tolerates it, that becomes part of the culture, even though you started beforehand and say that, people's well-being is a priority and all of that. So it's being very conscious of, shaping the culture is, allowing people to be themselves and be inclusive, but you also need to make sure that, leadership is there to be accountable and make sure that, things which people wouldn't tolerate and things that, on a day-to-day basis ruin the experience of others, that you deal with them. Because otherwise that kind of spoils the culture. And it's true that, the values of people and what people are looking for are changing. People want meaningful work, they want to have a voice, they want to feel included, they want to have flexibility to work where, when, and how they work. They want to have a voice, they don't like the hierarchical structures that maybe we are used to in the past. So I think the culture needs to keep shifting, and you need to be listening to what people need and what's important to them, because I think we grow with the younger generation. I hear a lot of times people in the firm, older people, more senior people saying that, complaining about the new generation coming every year, it's worse, nothing is enough, we keep giving, but still they want more, still they want people to hold their hand and stuff like that. But it's quite the contrary. These people come, they know a lot more than we do about technology. They know a lot more about, what, our clients want, because, our clients now have this younger generation in them. They know about the problems of the world. They know how to, go on YouTube and on Instagram and on all the platforms and learn things by themselves. I mean, I have teenagers as sons, and the stuff that they know and they get excited about is not the stuff that they hear at school. It's not the stuff that, they read in textbooks. It's all the stuff that's on the internet, and they come to me and they say, I want to invest in cryptos. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm like, oh, wait. And my friend, overnight they want this and they did that, and I saw this entrepreneurial course that I want to do. So they're a lot more curious, and it's fascinating. And if we crush them and don't let them be themselves and bring all these new ideas, they're going to be irrelevant. So it's embracing what the younger generation needs and make the world and our firms, a much more fun place to be. We recruit about 100, 150 people every year, new recruits, and every year they look much younger than the year before to me. But it just keeps us young. As long as you give them a voice and listen to their needs. So I think that's what culture is. It's not just set in stone. It's evolving all the time, and you have to be listening and constantly changing and adapting.
And Rose, have you seen that this new generation, when they come to recruitment agencies and they start a recruitment process, do they include questions about company culture, the type of company that they're going to go into? Do they have requirements about this? Like, don't introduce me to these companies, or I'm looking for a company that is into this kind of CSR or something like that, or is it about salary and position and the standards?
Well, it's quite an interesting question, and I think there are potentially two sides to the coin. Because first of all, what we have to look at is what's actually happening in current events. I mean, Cyprus in itself is actually building back probably stronger and better than it's been in the last few years. But as a result, we're actually noticing that our unemployment rate in Cyprus has now dropped to only 5.7%, which is pretty much nothing. And at the same time, of course, with current global events, we're seeing spiraling costs. I mean, inflation by the end of this year is anticipated to be around 8%. So I'm sure we've all noticed when we stop at Alpha Mega or we head down to the petrol station how much it's costing us. So culture does matter, but so does salary. And actually, it's very important for us as an industry to understand whether we, as an employer, are actually paying both a competitive but also a fair wage as well. Now, probably the first way to answer that question, the most convenient, if you actually head to our website, which is grsrecruitment.com, you will actually find there that you can download our free salary survey, which will give you an idea on the current kind of benchmarking as it is. But equally so, if you're looking for something slightly more tailored, then that's something that we can do for our clients as well. If someone wants to find out if the salaries in their particular industry or location are competitive. But I will say that salary is not the only motivational factor. And yes, as we touched on, culture is more and more important. Employer branding, as we refer to it. Historically, as HR professionals, I'm sure many of us have looked on the social media of the candidates that we're looking to hire. We want to understand who these people actually are, not just what's on their CV. Well, what's important to understand now as an employer is the candidates are doing exactly the same thing to you. They actually want to see if you live and breathe the culture that you embody. And yes, again, going back to the values, are they simply things that we write on that white wall, or is it something that we've actually integrated and has been adopted by our teams as well? One of the things I think that currently is very, very important, however, as any business, is actually to look at your well-being policy within your company. There's no doubt the last couple of years have exposed us to stress, anxiety. We've seen, obviously, burnout from staff members. So I think it's important that when we look at our employer branding and whether we really have adopted that positive culture, we need to actually look at, do we have a robust well-being policy in place? Now, what does that mean? Well, it could be that we're encouraging our teams to go to gym sessions, to do yoga classes. It could be we're offering hybrid working, flexible working hours, meal allowances. All of these things are actually the things that candidates ask us for most now, yeah? It's the major change that we've seen on the market. Now, we actually recently did a survey, and believe it or not, here in Cyprus, only 20% of businesses actually had a robust well-being policy that had actually been adopted and fully integrated into the organizations. So I'm sure there are many leaders in the business in this room today. So one thing that I do want you to take away from this morning's discussion is think to yourself, do I actually have a robust well-being policy that has been both integrated into our business? Is there a focus on my employees' well-being, both physically and mentally? And if the answer is that you're not actually very sure, which is often the answer I get when I ask people, then, as Paris said, you can't actually wait, that's got to change today. So I think the most important thing is to look at culture, because people are now peering through your windows to see how you really run your business.
And talking about this specifically, I want to move on to the last question with a research study that is related to all of these new exciting trends that are happening in HR and in the restructuring of our work life in the world. So a few days ago at the World Economic Forum event in Davos, experts discussed the option of cutting a day out of the typical working week without reducing the employee pay, so the famous 4-day week. Jonas Pricey, who is the chairman and CEO of Manpower Group, ran a 4-month trial on this, and the results were that 90% of the workers felt the change had improved their work-life balance, which drastically improved the number of employees who felt they had a long-term future in the company, therefore, employee retention. Plus, he did say that it all comes down to trust. So, giving people different choices, trusting their judgment. Microsoft Japan said in 2019 that its sales were boosted by 40% after applying this 4-day week policy. Iceland has established the trials and said that it has had an overwhelming success last year. The UAE has also started applying this, and they have said that 70% of the employees reported that they're working more efficiently, and 55% reduction in employee absenteeism as well. UK, US, Canada are already testing this, and PwC is testing this summer here in Cyprus, so I'm very excited about asking you this, Anna. I'm going to put you on the spotlight. How is it going? Why did you guys decide to go into this trend? What can you tell us in Cyprus? This is the first time happening here.
Yeah, actually we haven't, it hasn't started for us yet. It starts 1st of July. So how we came about this decision was that from January, having new leadership in the firm, and having reflected on the different trends in the people space, we wanted to revisit our people value proposition and evolve flexibility and valuing and caring for our people. And in that context, we saw that one of the biggest challenges that our people are facing is the pressure, the fact that for the past 2 years, the line between work and life was so blurred with people working from home. So we decided that, looking ahead and, what are the new trends and how we can help people to build further their well-being, we decided to go with the 4-day week. Obviously, we know it's not the answer to everything. It's not the answer to the well-being of our people. At the same time, we are endorsing initiatives of letting go of unprofitable clients, centralizing processes which are not value-adding, and actually digitizing or removing them from people's things that they need to do, and creating different setups to actually deal with that sort of work, recruiting more people in so as to relieve that pressure. But all of these initiatives, I think the 4-day week was the thing that kind of, people remember. And this is the thing that people get excited about. We don't know what the outcome will be, but what we're counting on is that because it will be on a Friday, and by exception on a Monday. So we are shutting our offices on Friday, and we're saying consider it is a Saturday. There is no support unless there is a very urgent transaction that needs to be dealt with, that you have no flexibility of negotiating with your client to defer it until Monday. And for those people that, if by exception they need to work on a Friday, then they would get the Monday. And that way, we are prolonging the weekends. It's 2 months in the summer. The weather is glorious outside. People prefer to be on the beach and by the pool rather than in the offices. And we are confident that, people with the view of seeing Friday as a day off and getting these long weekends and, potentially traveling for a short break, that they will be more, empowered to actually finish their work by Thursday afternoon. So we are cutting the hours. It was a process of negotiating on the hours. So in the summer, we typically work 37 hours per week. There was a negotiation between human capital and the leadership on where we get on the hours. We landed on 36 hours. The benefits and the pay stays exactly the same. But we see that, it's a day where, we are kind of forcing everyone to take the day off and disconnect. That reduces the traffic of all the emails and back and forth people needing one another. Because when people, take annual leave, the rest of the people are working. So you see a lot of traffic. So we are aiming that, people will get motivated to finish their work by Thursday evening and then be able to enjoy a long weekend with their families, their friends, do things and relax. It is a period which for us is not that busy, so we decided that, we'll kind of pilot it during these 2 months where it's not February and March where it's all our listed clients' deadlines, and we know that may not be realistic to achieve that. So we're piloting a period where we're very confident that it will work. We did receive calls from clients saying, what's going to happen? Can we come and work for you July, August? But it's part of, building the culture also with our clients that, we can make sure that we finish everything we can on Thursday, and if something spills over to Monday, it's okay. We already see the trend, If you look at your calendars of when people book meetings, you will see that Friday is the last resort. People will book Tuesday to Thursday. I know from my experience, I see my calendar being filled up from Tuesday to Thursday. Then Monday starts filling up, and then it's a last resort on Friday. So people want to avoid, being fully operational on Fridays. We did have half-day Fridays in the summer. So I think we're halfway there, so it's the next step. And it's part of, giving flexibility and also giving these shutdown days to actually allow people to decompress. We tested it last year at the end of our financial year. We had a weekend after 30th of June. So we gave people 4 continuous days. And people say it was the best 4 days of the year. Because it was the end of the financial year. All the pressure around financials and closing deadlines was off. So everyone got to disconnect. So everyone could enjoy it without, having to keep checking their mobile phones. So we very much hope that it works, and we'll see the feedback from our people. Happy to share once we see it. And we do very much hope that, this creates a trend and, more companies embrace this initiative. And hopefully, all the benefits of technology and efficiencies that are brought by that, it translates into better life for everyone. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to school on Saturday. And I remember when I went to secondary school and that changed, it was, wow, you have 1 extra day. So why not add another one?
It seems to be, well, definitely we'll check with you after summer, get some pointers. But it seems to be a trend, flexibility, right? Something that is becoming a bit more part of our culture, and also in our fintech industry, since there is a lot of different nationalities that are involved, etc. Flexibility is one of the main trends in there. So, Elena, you post a lot on LinkedIn about the flexibility and how that is part of very much of the culture in your company, etc. So what do you think about all of these new policies about these four-day week, for example?
Yeah, it's quite interesting experience, and I will be looking forward to talk to Anna like in a couple of months to see the results, because recently some of these ideas were heavily criticized in public, and the criticism started from the unlimited vacation balance for the employees, so they can take as many holidays as they can in some of the companies. The problem is that previously they were not taking holidays, and right now they will not take any holidays. So whatever you announce, it will not be executed, and people will not feel any happiness because it's just additional pressure. Okay, I have 2 months vacation per year, but I don't have time for this. And many of us had experience when we do our work during holidays, because like nobody can replace us, or pressure or whatever. And the core idea that the companies should employ is that they should decrease the workload by hiring additional people, by doing some automation, by introducing some healthy practices among the managers. Otherwise, your employees will feel even bigger pressure on themselves. They have to be at home, they have to rest on Fridays or, I don't know, Saturday nights, but they have work to do. And in our company, in Exness, we tried different practices. We tried to do company holidays for the whole company from 2019, like a week or a few weeks during a year, and this worked because the whole office is closed, nobody is working, nobody is sending any emails, and 1 week is not so much to sacrifice in this extent. We try to do no meeting Thursdays, when like on Thursdays we have no meetings. But I know many employees are bypassing that because this is the only day when you can meet with your employee and you can sneak around, like not saying that you have a meeting, but in fact you have a meeting. So the main idea of all these well-being practices should start from the idea decreasing the pressure and workload, and all the other tools will follow. So I really hope that in PricewaterhouseCoopers this will work really in practice, not just on paper, because otherwise employees will start believing in all these nice press releases.
We don't have much time left, actually, because the conversation is so exciting that we still have a lot of topics to go through. But Anna and Paris, if you want to touch on, a little bit on this, and then add what's your take on the HR KPIs? How do we measure that into the companies? How do you recommend that companies apply this? That would be great.
A lot of stress because I see time's up. We'll manage. Time management, right? It's so important. And which leads us to what is really important in happening to achieve what we were discussing before, the 5 days, the 4 days a week. I think the 5 days, the 9 to 5, 5 days a week is a construct of the 19th century, and it doesn't serves us anymore. So I am really excited. It's been a while that I am following up on this, and the results are really promising. So hopefully, I'm really happy that PwC is doing it in Cyprus. We are really looking forward to see the results. And because as Ross said, the well-being, it's so important. And I think this is the whole goal, to balance the two, right? Work life with personal life, because then you are more effective, when you are well rested and you go to your work, relaxed and positive and eager to give as much as you can. And then you asked about KPIs. I think I am not a KPI guru. My favorite quote is from an American statistician that says that without data, you're just a person with an opinion. And I think we hear a lot of opinions, what we need, and I am pro-technology, so I think we really need data, in order to understand what are our needs and what needs to be done. So some relevant KPIs that could be implemented that give us a result are employee satisfaction. I think that's very important, and that's very related to what I am doing as well.
Thank you, Anna. Paris?
All right, so closing thoughts, I guess. There's not a single person in Cyprus that doesn't know somebody that works for PwC. So Anna, it's all eyes on you this summer, okay? We all want to know what's happening.
Thanks for being our guinea pig.
Yeah. Elena, thank you for explaining why there's a drop in traffic once a year in Agios Philaxios when the coal company shuts down. Okay, so here's a couple of things about trends. I think the whole remote workplace, hybrid, this isn't going to go away. Some companies are going to embrace it, some are not. What is going to change is how we measure productivity, and I will call it the 3-day holiday week. So the 4 days they will be working, the data you're going to start to collect on them over the next few years is going to change. which changes your KPIs. You actually have an indicator now. Right? So everything, I think, in that sense is going to start changing as we shift towards more data acquisition that gives us more insights. We're using more tech. When we're working, if we're not at work, how are we tracking data? So that whole thing is going to change significantly. The biggest trend I see in learning and development, I mean, we design bespoke academies for companies and we offer corporate retreats, and we've seen a huge increase in demand. And the reason for that is a lot of these companies are saying, well, you can work from home, but maybe once a quarter, we all need to get together for a workation kind of thing. So Mykonos and all these other places are quite hot this summer for companies and corporate retreats. And I think the travel industry got a huge hit during COVID, but they're going to have a massive boost if they focus on corporate retreats, where people get to actually see each other for the first time and develop relationships and love affairs and the rest of it. So that's, I think, a couple of things that I see coming up. I think we're in a very transitionary state right now. The dust is not settled by any stretch of the imagination. In Cyprus, it never does anyway. But in the next few years, we're going to start to see a new reality, and it just needs to be, everybody needs to brace for it and be prepared.
I really hope so. I know our time is up, but if we can have 1 or 2 questions from the audience, that would be great. Anybody has any questions? Right there was first.
Hi, thank you. Anna, yeah, super inspiring. I think the whole audience is like really waiting. My question, okay guys, don't kill me for that. I know a lot of things have been said, remote work. So just to get a few advices maybe from each of you, like a few words. So I'm a part of a marketing team, head of marketing operations at Tikmil. And you know, we are trying to get back to the office, but then there's a lot of resistance from some teams. And for some teams, remote work works really great. But we are a creative team, so can you give any advice, some advice, on how to manage, you know, working remotely, but then also kind of getting together where some people do prefer work from home, and then, you know, let's say somebody is pushing for office work, so any advice on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to take it?
Well, I think it's probably important to remember that the office is probably the most central part of our business when it comes to social cohesion, because yes, it's wonderful now that we get to work from our kitchen tables, from Starbucks, or even from the beach. But again, indeed. But again, when it comes to those creative meetings or those brainstorming events, there's no doubt that these actually take place best in the office. And I actually believe that for an employee's psychology, it is still better to integrate some work in the office into their timetable, because you'll find that it will again ease anxiety, stress, burnout, it will build relations. So you still need those watercolor moments. I think it's more about thinking about what is the activity that's taking place. Is it that I'm going to prepare a PowerPoint presentation, which is going to take me an hour, in which case, yes, undoubtedly, I'll probably be better doing that from home. But if that activity is, again, that brainstorming meeting, then it has to happen in the office. So design your calendar around the actual activities which are taking place and find that balance.
I would like to add, I think the prize for the best creative idea will go to Elon Musk, who recently sent a note to all his managers. You are going to the office or you are fired. So probably soon we will know if this works out or not, because really this is probably one of the options that companies may employ, and the results will be, of course, publicly announced soon.
I would say that this is a big question for a lot of leaders right now who are thinking, how do I get my staff back home being work? Unless they have a big home and that's where they all work. And so what I would say is that I see a lot of companies focusing on playgrounds, kids, nurseries, like all these, like, you know, we'll pay for the gas for you to come at work, we'll pay for lunch, we'll do. None of that is working. What they need is autonomy. And they've proven it to you over the last 2 years, that they had it and they worked just as fine. So I think that's part of the question. Then a balance, and I agree with both of you, a balance is needed, right? So it's not 100% one and 100% the other. But I think we just need to realize that when people are left on their own and they're not micromanaged, they can actually do great stuff, as long as you measure them correctly.
I think from our own company, from Finance Magnates, we have seen a mix of everything, because there is many different departments, and some departments, like the editorial team, they need to work independently. They have their own network, they need to focus and write. They cannot be in an office where everybody stops by every 2 minutes and breaks their workflow and their creativity. So that's one part of being creative. Then there is the marketing team, the management team. So as management, myself, I need to work from home because if I'm in the office 5 days a week, I cannot get my reporting done, I cannot get my evaluations done, I cannot get my budgeting done. So I have like 1 day a week, Fridays, that I work from home 100% of the time. I'm available online, but I see that I am a lot less reached out to if I'm working from home, which allows me to have periods of time, like 2 hours I'm focusing on this task, and then I'm checking my emails, I'm checking my Skype, I'm checking everything else. For my creative team, since we have to work in marketing, in creation of ideas, in campaigns, all these sort of things, we do have specific days that we gather. So we give people the flexibility that some people prefer to work from home or live far away in Nicosia or Lania or go figure. So they work 2 days a week from home, for example, and then the rest of the week they come to the office. So we know that those days these people are going to be available, and we arrange the team schedule for creative things around those days. This is working fine for us. Anybody wants to add something?
I think it's all about, how you build it in a team. I mean, from our experience, is that, we had flexibility before COVID. So people could work from anywhere they wanted. People were not really embracing it. We were running competitions to encourage people to work from home and from cafes. Then overnight, everyone went home, and in the beginning it was, how do they have the place to sit, the second screens to make them more effective and all of that. So now people have more or less, the setup at home that works for them because we provided it for them. They built it on their own. They like this autonomy of being able to decide when to work from home and when from the office. What we've seen around the firm is that, some teams after COVID, because we were debating as leadership, do we force people back? Do we give an indication we expect you to be in the office 2-3 times a week or a specific day? All these things, went through our minds. We were counting how many people were coming in. We saw some leaders that, they wanted to bring their people in because they were more comfortable seeing them, physically because they couldn't, trust that it was as effective to work remotely. But then we decided that, what people value and what we heard from people is that they value this autonomy, this, give me the flexibility and I will make it work. And then we said, okay, but you know what, we need to have some principles, some guidelines, We have customers, we have the teams, we have juniors coming in that need to be trained, so they need on-the-job coaching. They need to build their network to get to know people and, no matter how good the remote things are, unless you are physically in the same place and do some fun activities together, you don't build that connection with people. So we've kind of established some kind of ground principles that, we need to bring the client on board and see, when does the client prefer us to be on site? When does the client want to have physical meetings? When do they prefer to have virtual meetings? And as a team, how we're going to make sure that, we'll be able to get together and, as a team, share things, innovative, build new things and all of that. So, and we gave the power to each team leader to bring the team together and facilitated it, these are the things to think about and build your own kind of flexible time plan together with your client. So each team ended up with something different, which keeps changing depending on the projects they're working on, etc. But it's not necessarily you need to bring people in the office, You might work around, different places to have fun activities. So if the purpose of bringing people into the office is to have fun and bond with each other, maybe the office is not it. Maybe it's some other space. So.
Customization, yes. I'm going to thank you all. I'm afraid that we have really run out of time and over it, but this has been a very, very insightful, very interesting discussion. I thank you all very much. Big round of applause, please, for our speakers.